everyone. This is a virtual field trip to Paris, and I want to take you on this field trip because the setting of Paris is really important and the sun also rises. And I'll move my head down a little bit. And I've gotten to go to Paris twice in my life. I feel very, very lucky. Once when I was studying at the University of Glasgow, and it was cheap to go over there, and then once as part of my Lilly Grant trip that I got. Um, and probably if I had a choice to go somewhere every year for the rest of my life, I would probably choose Paris. I love it. It's a gorgeous city. Okay, so there's Hazel in a backpack carrier, and that is how she saw Europe. But Paris is just magical. There's fountains everywhere, and it's just gorgeous. Both times that I've gone, it's been really rainy and cloudy and overcast. So I hope to go there sometime when it's actually sunny. But when my husband and I and Hazel went for my Lily Grant trip, this was the view from the apartment we were staying at. We got an Airbnb. And it was so cool to see the Eiffel Tower from our door, from our window. And we were on the sixth floor in a really old building, and there was no elevator, so we had to carry all our luggage up 6 flights of stairs with Hazel on our back. My husband was carrying her, so I lucked out there. But that's just the city. This is Notre Dame Cathedral. Notre Dame burned last year. This was before that, and Jake mentions Notre Dame throughout the book from time to time. It's just a really large, huge church, and it just kind of takes up a lot of space, and it's really imposing. It's Gothic style, and it's kind of this kind of heavy, ornate style. It was built, I think, starting in the 12 or 1300s. It's really, really old. And there is Hazel and I at the Eiffel Tower, and she was so excited. We kept looking at pictures of Paris before we went on our trip, and as soon as it got into view, she goes, "Eiffel Tower!" And she was so excited. And then at the time, there was like a soccer championship from the European Cup, and so there was a big soccer ball hanging from it. And her highlight of the trip was the ball from the Eiffel Tower. She kept telling everyone about it, like not the Eiffel Tower, the ball. Um, okay, so when Jake talks a lot about the city, he talks about the river and he talks about bridges and going over the bridges. And really, the city is kind of divided by this river, and there may be two rivers. I'm not exactly sure. And then there's all these bridges that people walk across and drive across, and it kind of forms a rhythm to the city a little bit. And people walk by the water all the time, and I feel like there's a kind of romance to the streets because of that. That's part of it. But a lot of the streets that he's describing are a lot like this. And there's some more. This is the first time I went to Paris, so there's me. But these are what the streets look like, and Jake describes the streets all the time, and he describes them as kind of dark, but also with these lights all the time. And that Paris is known as a city of lights. I and At the time, these electric lights would have been fairly new. And there's just kind of a hustle and bustle to the city that's always going on in the book. And there is me at a Parisian restaurant, trying to look very sophisticated in my first trip to Paris. But there's just all these little corners that are just gorgeous, and just really sweet. The whole city is just so pretty. Here's another place. This is just a courtyard that has all these kind of raised steps that are black and white, and everything's kind of like this. Everything's ornate and fancy and artistic and a little bit whimsical as well. This is the place I stayed the second time I went. This was outside the apartment, and the apartment kind of had a little courtyard. So if you went out this way, it went out toward the street. And the effect that this had, so this is a courtyard, is that even though you were in the middle of a city, it became really quiet because one side of your building would be in this like really isolated little courtyard, and then it would go out on the streets. So not everything faces the streets. And I think that's kind of amazing. And think that kind of connects with the book, like the way the architecture is designed. There's places of quiet, and Jake finds places of quiet in the city. This is a view from the Sacre Coeur. It's a big church in Montmartre. This overlooks the Montmartre neighborhood, and Jake is living and walking around Montmartre a lot. And there's a lot of hills in that village, so he kind of goes up and down, and he describes that. but again, like really busy um, and bustling. Montmartre was an artistic community at the time. The other thing is, there's Hazel when she was so little. There's a lot of green space in Paris. This is one of the parks, and it's just absolutely huge. And there's just all this space like that that you can walk. It's a really walkable city, and there's tons of places for leisure. And you see that kind of in the way that Jake walks around the city and kind of relaxes at places too. This is one of the restaurants that Hemingway went to a lot, and you can see this. Let's see if I can get that away. Why is it not doing that? Um, there's just little seats out in the cafe outside, and then you can go inside to where the bar is. And but everybody eats outside if they can, and they're all kind of just gathered around all the time. And I really imagine when Frances is like so mad at Cone, and she's talking to Jake, like they're kind of in a cafe like this, and Cone is watching from the other side of the street. Okay, another street scene with like a restaurant outside. The cafes are everywhere. It's a really cafe culture. Everyone either goes to the bars or they go to the cafes and drink coffee, and everyone's on the street and everyone's people watching. And it kind of gives a really festive, communal feeling to the city. This is another place that Hemingway used to go to a lot. To Brasserie is a type of restaurant. And this is probably Hemingway's most favorite cafe that he went to the most, Cafe de Flore. I think he actually mentions it in the book, but that's what it looked like. At the time, this was a really poor neighborhood in Paris. It is now a really wealthy neighborhood, so the prices are crazy. It was absolutely packed when we went. We couldn't get a seat, so we had to go to a different cafe that he went to. And that's kind of the view of the street where Hemingway used to go all the time. So that kind of gives you a view of the city. Paris is this place of like bustle and parties, and but also grittiness and dirtiness in the city, and it's just recovering from war, and it becomes really an important setting in the book. Thanks.